Watch out, Commanders fans. The clock strikes midnight and Adam Peters has 3 bullets in the chamber. First, a ghostly edge rusher, released just today, might be our ace up the sleeve. But only if we act before dawn. Second, which veteran is seconds away from being traded for a rookie hungry for glory? Entire backfields tremble. Third, red alert in Ashburn. If we don't squash this venomous rumor, RWR1 will end up in Vegas. And Daniel's revolution bleeds out. You choose. Do we stay as pretenders or make a move and torch the NFC? It all gets decided in the next 72 hours. If you're not subscribed, you'll be watching the train go by, and our legacy slips away. Smack that like button before this blows up. Cleveland Browns just gifted Adam Peters a perfect Christmas present in the middle of summer. And my brothers, it's time we talk seriously about Ogbo Okoronkwo. The Browns let him go after signing him to a multi-million-dollar deal in 2023, and now he's available as a completely free agent. Do you understand the magnitude of what this means for our organization? It means we have the golden opportunity to grab a pass rusher with legitimate athletic attributes without paying the premium price that a player of his caliber normally costs. And I'm going to explain why this is bigger than most people realize. Okoronkwo isn't a household name like Jadeveon Clowney or Zadarius Smith, who have been sitting on the market like old furniture that nobody wants. But let me tell you who this player really is and why he might be exactly what Dan Quinn needs to complete his defensive puzzle. We're talking about a 26-year-old athlete who stands 6 feet 3 inches tall, weighs 250 pounds, and has that natural explosiveness that you just can't teach. He was a 5th-round pick by the Los Angeles Rams in 2018, where he had the opportunity to learn under Wade Phillips' system and later Raheem Morris. Do you know what that means? It means he already has experience in defensive schemes similar to what Quinn's implementing here in Washington. During his years with the Rams, Okoronkwo showed flashes of what he can do when he's healthy and motivated. In 2021, his best season in Los Angeles, he logged 5.5 sacks in just 14 games while rotating as a situational pass rusher. Those numbers won't impress anyone at first glance, but I'm telling you this, when you analyze the context, when you look at the snaps he played and production per snap, it starts painting a completely different picture. The Browns thought the same when they decided to bet big on him during the 2023 free agency. They gave him a 3-year contract worth $19 million with $8.5 million guaranteed. That's serious money for a player expected to be primarily a role player. But here's the problem Cleveland discovered. Okoronkwo never stayed consistently healthy, and when he was on the field, he couldn't translate his physical attributes into statistical production. In 2 seasons with the Browns, he amassed only 4.5 sacks in 27 games. For a team desperate for quarterback pressure, that production simply didn't justify the investment. But this is where the situation becomes interesting for us Commanders. You remember what we did last year with veterans who were a bit down on their luck? Bobby Wagner had been released by the Seahawks, and many thought his best days were behind him. What happened? He had one of his best seasons in years and became the leader of our defense. That's exactly the same strategy we could use with Okoronkwo. The fundamental difference here is that with Okoronkwo, we're talking about a 26-year-old player still in his athletic prime, not a 35-year-old veteran trying to squeeze out a few more productive years. And more importantly, we're talking about a player who has the exact physical profile that Dan Quinn has successfully used throughout his career as a defensive coordinator. Let me be specific about this. In Atlanta, Quinn developed players like Vic Beasley, who had 15.5 sacks in 2016. What were Beasley's attributes? Speed, explosiveness, and the ability to convert speed into power. Those are precisely the same attributes Okoronkwo possesses. In Dallas, Quinn worked with DeMarcus Lawrence, Taco Charlton, and several pass rushers who had similar frames and skill sets. Joe Witt Jr., our defensive coordinator, has also succeeded in developing players with similar athletic profiles during his time in Green Bay and Dallas. The problem we all know we have, the elephant in the room that no one wants to fully admit, is the lack of consistent pressure on the quarterback. While other division teams like Dallas have Micah Parsons terrorizing quarterbacks every Sunday, and Philadelphia has Hassan Reddick coming off the edge, we're relying on young players who have yet to prove themselves at an NFL level. Clellan Ferrell was a massive disappointment as the Raiders' first-round pick. Jamin Davis, although he's shown improvement, is still more potential than production. KJ Henry has upside but remains raw. F. Obata is a solid veteran, but isn't a game-changer who will turn the outcomes of games by himself. Okoronkwo could be that missing piece, that perfect complement who doesn't need to be the guy but can be a legitimate threat when he's on the field. And the best part, my brothers, is that it won't cost us a fortune. We're talking about a one-year prove-it deal, probably for less than $3 million, which could pay enormous dividends if everything goes well. But you know what's most interesting about this situation? The window of opportunity. Adam Peters has publicly stated he's willing to be patient and let the players we already have on the roster show what they can do during training camp before making additional moves. But if other teams begin to show interest in Okoronkwo, that patience could turn into a missed opportunity. I firmly believe this is exactly the type of calculated risk that successful teams take. It's not a huge investment, it doesn't compromise our future, but it has the potential to solve one of our biggest needs. It's a risk, absolutely, but in the NFL, you have to take calculated risks if you want to compete with the best teams in the league. And if it doesn't work, what do we really lose? A few $1 million that we were going to spend on depth players anyway. But if it does work, if Okoronkwo finally finds consistency under Quinn and Witt, we could be talking about one of the best value signings of the offseason. The question Peters has to ask himself is simple. Is it worth betting on the upside of a player who has all the tools but hasn't put it all together yet? I say yes, absolutely yes, because it's precisely these smart moves that separate well-run organizations from those that are always playing catch-up. If the Okoronkwo situation surprises you, wait till you hear what comes next about our backfield and a potential trade that nobody saw coming. Austin Ekeler, the veteran running back we brought in specifically to complement Jaden Daniels, and give him that security blanket in the passing game, might be on the trading block before the regular season begins. And this isn't my speculation, brothers. This isn't clickbait or unfounded rumors. This is being reported by serious analysts, following our team closely, and who have legitimate sources within the organization. And when they start connecting the dots, the picture that emerges is both fascinating and concerning at the same time. The situation is simple on the surface, but incredibly complicated when you dig deeper. Ekeler is 30, which in running back years is like being 45 in quarterback years. He's accumulated over 1,542 touches in his 8 NFL seasons, and every carry, every catch, every hit has accumulated wear and tear on a body that isn't what it was 5 years ago. But here's the kicker, and this is what has me really thinking. He's coming off a 2024 season plagued with injuries, including a concussion that kept him out for multiple weeks. And you know how I feel about concussions. It's not something that heals easily, especially for a running back who depends on his vision and decision-making more than raw speed dot in Los Angeles Chargers. Ekeler was an absolute machine during his peak years. We're talking about a player who had over 1,500 yards from scrimmage in 3 consecutive seasons, who caught 107 passes in 2021, who scored 20 touchdowns in 2022. That level of production isn't seen every day, especially from an undrafted free agent who had to grind his way to the top. But that was then, and this is now. The brutal reality of the NFL business is that teams don't pay players for what they did yesterday. They pay them for what they can do tomorrow. And the question Adam Peters has to answer is whether Ekeler, at 30, coming off injuries, can still be that dual-threat weapon that justifies his salary cap hit. Here's what really has me thinking. What's making this situation even more interesting? We have a 7th-round rookie, Jacory Crosky-Merritt from Alabama State, who's impressing absolutely everyone on the coaching staff during OTAs and minicamp. Anthony Lynn, our running backs coach, who has worked with some of the best backs in the league, is talking about this kid like he's discovered gold. Lynn says Crosky-Merritt is already showing professionalism beyond his years. His work ethic is off the charts, and he's growing like a weed every single day. Do you understand how significant that is? Lynn isn't a coach who throws around praises lightly. This is a man who coached LaDainian Tomlinson, who worked with Melvin Gordon, who has seen elite talent up close. When someone like Lynn starts getting excited about a 7th-round rookie, you need to pay attention. Crosky-Merritt himself is showing incredible confidence for being a late draft pick rookie. In interviews, he said that while teams know what's coming from him on paper, they really don't know what he's capable of until they see him perform. That mentality, that hunger, that chip on his shoulder, those are exactly the intangibles that separate serviceable players from impact players. The math here is simple but brutal for Ekeler. If Crosky-Merritt can provide 70 to 80% of what Ekeler brings to the table at a fraction of the cost, Peters has to consider all options. We're potentially talking millions in salary cap savings that could be redirected to areas of greater need. And what is our greatest need right now? Pass rush, edge rusher, pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Wouldn't it be perfect if we could package Ekeler along with a draft pick to get exactly what we need most? Think of it this way. There are teams out there desperate for veteran leadership in the backfield. Teams that have young quarterbacks who need that security blanket in the passing game. Teams that would value Ekeler's experience and playoff success. For us, he could be expendable. For them, he could be exactly what they need to get over the hump. Ekeler himself has been nothing but professional about the situation. In recent interviews, he's praised Jayden Daniels extensively, saying he already sees tremendous growth in the young quarterback. Ekeler mentioned that Daniels is already beyond rookie mistakes, that he's getting people lined up correctly, that he's orchestrating the offense like a veteran. Those are all beautiful sentiments. But I'm telling you this, in the NFL, being professional and being productive are two different things. Teams don't keep players because they're nice guys or because they say the right things in interviews. They keep players because they can help them win football games. The competition in our backfield is legitimately interesting too. We have Chris Rodriguez Jr., who showed flashes last season but hasn't been able to establish himself as a reliable contributor. Jeremy McNichols is fighting for a roster spot and right now looks like the odd man out. And then there's Brian Robinson Jr., who, when healthy, has shown he can be a legitimate NFL running back. If Crosky-Merritt continues impressing during training camp, if Robinson stays healthy, if either Rodriguez or McNichols steps up, suddenly Ekeler becomes a luxury rather than a necessity. And in a salary cap league, luxuries are often the first things that get traded away. The window for a potential trade is wide open right now, too. Training camps haven't started yet, so teams are still evaluating their rosters and identifying weaknesses. Once preseason games begin and rosters start getting set, the market for veteran running backs typically dries up significantly. Peters has to be thinking about this strategically. If he can get a 5th or 6th round pick for Ekeler, plus maybe a late round pick swap, that becomes additional ammunition to potentially move up in next year's draft or to package for a bigger trade during the season. I believe that this is one of those situations where timing is everything. If Crosky-Merritt has a strong training camp, if Robinson shows he's fully healthy, if our offensive line looks solid enough to create holes for whoever's carrying the ball, then suddenly trading Ekeler becomes not just possible, but probable. And, you know what? Maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's exactly the kind of smart, forward-thinking move that separates good organizations from great ones. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions about popular players to put your team in the best position to succeed long term. The question for us as fans is, are we ready to trust Peters and his evaluation of our backfield depth? Are we comfortable potentially losing a proven veteran for the upside of younger, cheaper alternatives? Because that decision might be coming sooner than any of us expected. But here comes the really crazy part, the news that worries me more than anything else this entire offseason, and this, my brothers, is literally keeping me up at night. Serious rumors and mock trades are circulating that will send Terry McLaurin, our beloved scary Terry, to the Las Vegas Raiders. Terry McLaurin. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about a player who's remained loyal to this organization through all the horrible seasons we've endured. All the coaches who have been fired, all the quarterbacks who rotated through here like a revolving door. This is the man who never complained, never demanded a trade, never threw anyone under the bus publicly. David Hellman from Fox Sports is suggesting that the Raiders might genuinely be interested in McLaurin to form a skill position group that includes Brock Bowers, the tight end phenomenon, Ashton Jeanty, who could be special, and Jacoby Myers as a solid complementary receiver. And you know what? On paper that sounds absolutely incredible for Las Vegas. But I'm telling you this with all the passion I have for this team. If Adam Peters is even considering this possibility, something is fundamentally wrong in the contract. Negotiations, and we need to address it immediately before this situation gets completely out of hand. Let me paint the picture of what Terry McLaurin means to this organization and why losing him would be catastrophic for our future. Since being drafted in 2019, Terry has been the one constant bright spot in what has been mostly darkness for this franchise. While other players came and went, while coaches got hired and fired, while the entire organization was in chaos under Dan Snyder, Terry was there producing at an all-pro level. Let me give you the numbers that prove exactly what we'd be losing. In his 5 NFL seasons, Terry has accumulated 4,911 receiving yards and 24 touchdowns. Those numbers might not jump off the page compared to elite receivers like Davante Adams or Mike Evans. But consider the context. He did this with some of the worst quarterback play in recent NFL history. Do you remember 2019? When he had to catch passes from Dwayne Haskins, Case Keenum, and Colt McCoy, still managed 919 yards as a rookie. 2020, when the quarterback situation was even worse, still posted 1,118 yards. 2021, when Taylor Heinicke was our starting quarterback, for most of the season, still managed 1,053 yards. That's not just good production, my brothers. That's elite production under impossible circumstances. Imagine what those numbers would look like if he'd had consistent quarterback play during those years. Imagine what they would look like now that we finally have Jaden Daniels, a legitimate franchise quarterback. And here's what's frustrating me the most about this entire situation. We're finally in position to see what Terry can really do with proper quarterback play. And instead of locking him up long term, we're apparently exploring trade options. That makes absolutely no sense to me strategically. The contract situation is complicated, and I understand that. Terry is currently playing under his 5th-year option, which means he's scheduled to become a free agent after this season. He wants a long-term extension that reflects his value to this organization and his production despite adverse circumstances. And frankly, he deserves every penny of what he's asking for. But here's where things get concerning. The holdout during mandatory minicamp showed me something different about Terry's approach. This is a player who traditionally has been quiet, professional, and willing to put the team first. The fact that he was willing to miss mandatory practices tells me he's reached his limit with the negotiations. And you know what? I don't blame him one bit. This man has given everything to this organization. He's been professional when other players were causing drama. He's been productive when the team around him was struggling. He's been loyal when he could have easily requested a trade to a better situation. Now we finally have a team that can compete. Finally have a quarterback who can get him the ball consistently. Finally have an offensive system that can maximize his talents. And instead of rewarding that loyalty, we're potentially shopping him around. That's not just bad business. That's bad karma. Let me tell you what we'd be giving Las Vegas if this trade were to happen. We'd be giving them a 29-year-old receiver who's entering his prime, who has never had a major injury, who runs every route in the route tree at an elite level, and who has proven he can produce regardless of who's throwing him the ball. Brock Bowers is already a stud tight end. Ashton Jenney has the potential to be special out of the backfield. Add Terry McLaurin to that mix with Geno Smith at quarterback, and suddenly the Raiders have a legitimate playoff caliber offense. Meanwhile, what do we have? Hope that our young receivers can develop quickly enough to replace elite production. And for what? To save money on the salary cap? To get a couple of draft picks that might turn into players half as good as Terry already is? That's not smart roster management. That's penny-wise and pound-foolish thinking. The truth is that receivers like Terry McLaurin don't grow on trees. You can draft receivers in the first round and still not get the combination of route running, hands, speed, and football IQ that Terry brings to the table every single Sunday. Ask teams like Jacksonville, Denver, or Chicago how easy it is to find that level of consistent production at the receiver position. What's more concerning to me is what this would signal to the rest of the roster and to future free agents. If we're willing to trade away our most loyal and productive players during contract negotiations, what message does that send? It tells everyone that no matter how much you give to this organization, when it comes time to get paid, you're expendable. And from Jaden Daniels' perspective, how is he supposed to feel about losing his number one target just as he's entering his second season? The chemistry they developed during the second half of last season was beautiful to watch. Terry became Jaden's security blanket, his go-to guy in crucial moments. Breaking up that partnership as it's hitting its stride would be organizational. Malpractice? I keep trying to convince myself that this is just negotiation tactics, that Peters is using these rumors to create leverage in contract talks. Maybe he's trying to show Terry's agent that there's a market for his services, so they need to be reasonable with their demands. Maybe it's all just smoke without any real fire behind it. But I'm telling you this, even if it's just negotiation tactics, it's a dangerous game to play. Sometimes when you threaten to trade a player to gain leverage, other teams make offers that are too good to refuse. Sometimes what starts as a negotiation tactic becomes a reality that you never intended. If Terry McLaurin ends up in Las Vegas, catching passes from Geno Smith while we are trying to replace his production with rookies and journeymen, it'll go down as one of the worst moves in recent franchise history. And that's saying something. Considering some of the decisions this organization has made over the years, the solution here is simple. Pay the man what he's worth, lock him up long-term, and move forward with one of the best receiver-quarterback combinations in the entire league. Don't overthink it. Don't try to get cute with salary cap management. Just do what's right for both the player and the organization, because losing Terry McLaurin wouldn't just be losing a great receiver. It would be losing the heart and soul of this offense, losing credibility with the rest of the roster, and potentially sabotaging Jaden Daniels' development just as he's ready to take the next step forward. And when you thought we were done with the news bombs, here comes information that could really change everything about how we view this upcoming season. Daron Payne, our $26 million defensive tackle who has been under scrutiny for his inconsistent production, is showing a completely different attitude and level of leadership that has the entire organization genuinely excited about what's possible. This is potentially the most important story I'm sharing with you today because it affects everything else that happens on defense. If Daron Payne can finally become the dominant interior force we know he's capable of being, it changes our entire defensive outlook for this season and beyond. For the first time in years, Payne doesn't have Jonathan Allen as his security blanket. He doesn't have that alpha male sitting next to him in meetings, telling him what to do, taking all the media attention and pressure. Jonathan Allen was undoubtedly a tremendous player for us, but his presence also meant that Payne never had to step up and become the leader his talent level suggests he should be. And do you know what's happening now that Allen has gone to Minnesota? Payne is flourishing like never before. He's showing leadership qualities, vocal presence, and a level of engagement during all-season workouts that multiple people within the organization have specifically commented on. John Keane from ESPN, who covers this team religiously and has sources throughout the building, is reporting that multiple coaches and front office personnel have singled out Payne during OTA work. They're saying he appears more relaxed, more extroverted, and most importantly, more willing to take on that alpha role that has been vacant since Allen's departure. This is enormous for our defense because if Payne can return to his 2022 level when he logged 11.5 sacks from the interior, our entire defensive line becomes exponentially more dangerous. But let me explain exactly why this development is so significant and what it could mean moving forward. Daron Payne was drafted 13th overall in 2008, and expectations were immediately sky high. Alabama defensive linemen don't just get drafted in the first round because they're good college players. They get drafted because they have the physical tools and football IQ to become impact players at the professional level immediately. But from day one, Payne has been somewhat inconsistent in his production and approach. Some games, he would look absolutely dominant, collapsing pockets, generating pressure, and stopping run plays single-handedly. Other games, he would disappear completely, almost like he was playing not to make mistakes rather than playing to. Make impact plays. Part of that inconsistency can be attributed to scheme changes. He's played under multiple defensive coordinators with different philosophies and expectations. Part of it can be attributed to the players around him. When you don't have consistent edge rush, interior linemen often get chipped and double-teamed more frequently. But honestly, part of it was also about mentality and leadership presence. Allen was always the vocal leader, the guy who commanded respect in the huddle, the player the other defensive linemen looked to for guidance. Payne was content to be the talented sidekick rather than the featured player. The 2022 season showed us exactly what Payne is capable of when everything aligns correctly. Those 11.5 sacks from an interior lineman are absolutely elite numbers. For context, Aaron Donald, who many consider the best interior pass rusher of this generation, averages about 12 to 13 sacks per season from the same position. But then 2023 and 2024 happened, and Payne's production dropped significantly. Combined 8 sacks over 2 seasons for a player making elite money at his position simply isn't acceptable. And that's what made his contract situation so precarious entering this offseason. Payne is currently the highest paid player on our entire roster with a salary cap hit of $26.17 million for 2025. Next year, if we keep him, he will count $28 million against the cap. Those are elite money numbers that demand elite production. If we released him after this season, we could save $16.8 million in cap space money that could be used to address other needs. So this isn't just about leadership and personality changes. This is about a player who understands that his entire future with this organization depends on him returning to that 2022 level of production. The organization has invested heavily in him, and now it's time to deliver results that justify that investment. What makes me optimistic about this situation is that Payne is still only 27 years old. He's entering what should be his prime years as an NFL player. Interior linemen often hit their peak performance between ages 27 and 30. So the timing is perfect for a breakout season if he can maintain this new mindset. Dan Quinn's defensive system should also complement Payne's skill set perfectly. Quinn likes to use interior linemen aggressively, giving them opportunities to rush the passer on obvious passing downs while also expecting them to be strong against the run. That two-way versatility is exactly what made Payne attractive as a first-round pick originally. Joe Witt Jr., our defensive coordinator, has experience working with talented interior linemen throughout his career. He understands how to maximize their impact while also putting them in positions to succeed based on their individual strengths. The combination of Quinn's scheme and Witt's coaching could be exactly what Payne needs to reach his full potential. But beyond just scheme fit, what excites me most about these reports is the leadership aspect. Defense is ultimately about 11 players working together as one unit. When you have someone like Jonathan Allen commanding respect and setting the tone, it makes everyone's job easier. Without that presence, someone else has to step up and fill that void. If Payne can become that vocal leader, that player others look to during critical moments, it could transform our entire defensive identity. Interior linemen are naturally positioned to see the entire field, to communicate adjustments, to set the tone physically for how the defense is going to play. And do you know what else makes this exciting? The players around him. If Payne can return to elite form, it makes everyone else on that defensive line better. Edge rushers get better matchups because offenses can't slide protection away from a dominant interior presence. Linebackers get cleaner reads because interior pressure forces quarterbacks to make quicker decisions. The secondary also benefits tremendously from consistent interior pressure. When quarterbacks are uncomfortable in the pocket, they make hurried decisions. They don't go through full progressions, and they're more likely to make mistakes that create turnover opportunities. So this isn't just about Daron Payne having a good individual season. This is about him potentially becoming the catalyst that elevates our entire defense from average to above average, or from good to great. I believe that sometimes adversity brings out the best in people. Losing Allen wasn't necessarily what anyone wanted, but if it forces Payne to become the leader and dominant player that his talent suggests he should be, then maybe it's exactly what was needed for his development. The key now is sustaining this new attitude and approach throughout training camp, preseason, and into the regular season. It's one thing to show leadership during voluntary workouts when there's no contact and no real pressure. It's another thing entirely to maintain that presence when games matter and the season is on the line. But if these reports are accurate, if Payne really has found a new gear mentally and emotionally, then we might be looking at a defense that could surprise a lot of people this season. And in a division like the NFC East, where every game matters, having a dominant interior presence could be the difference between making the playoffs and watching them from home. The expectation now has to be that Payne not only returns to his 2022 production level, but potentially exceeds it. With better scheme fit, improved leadership, and more responsibility, there's no reason he can't be mentioned among the elite interior linemen in the entire league. And if that happens, if Daron Payne becomes the player we've all been waiting for him to become, then suddenly a lot of the other questions about our defense become much easier to answer. Because elite interior pass rush covers up a multitude of sins and makes every other position group more effective. Commanders fans, these 4 stories show us exactly where we are as an organization at this crucial moment. We have opportunities in the free agent market that could help us address immediate needs. We have difficult decisions to make with veteran players on our roster. We have to resolve critical contract negotiations that could determine our offensive ceiling. And we have key players who are stepping up when we need them most. But do you know what excites me the most about absolutely everything we've discussed today? It's that for the first time in years, decades even, we're talking about strategic moves rather than just putting out fires. Adam Peters is building something special here in Washington, and each of these decisions will define if we can truly compete in the NFC East and make a legitimate playoff run. I believe with all my heart that we should sign Okoronkwo immediately. Give him a chance to compete during training camp with nothing to lose and everything to gain. I believe we should resolve Terry McLaurin's situation with a fair extension that keeps him in Burgundy and Gold where he belongs for the rest of his prime years. If Austin Ekeler can be part of a trade package that brings us the edge rush help that we desperately need, then we should seriously consider it. And if Daron Payne really has found this new level of leadership and motivation, then I expect nothing less than a return to that 2022 form that showed us what elite interior pressure looks like. Let me know in the comments what you think of each of these situations. Are you worried about potentially losing Terry McLaurin? Do you trust that Daron Payne can sustain this new attitude throughout the season? Should we take a flyer on Okoronkwo's athletic upside? And most importantly, do you believe that this roster as currently constructed can compete with teams like Philadelphia, Dallas, and the New York Giants for divisional supremacy? This is our community. This is our family of fans who have suffered together through too many disappointing seasons. But finally, we're seeing light at the end of what has been a very long tunnel. If you feel the same excitement that I feel, if you truly believe that this season is going to be different, if you want to continue being part of this journey towards something special, I need you to smash that like button and subscribe to this channel, because I guarantee you that tomorrow we're going to have more explosive news, more in-depth analysis, and more reasons to believe that our Washington Commanders are building something that will make everyone in the DMV proud to wear burgundy and gold again. Remember, we've been through the worst of times together, and now we're ready for the best of times. Stay locked in, stay passionate, and never forget hail to the Commanders.